Welcome dear students. Today we shall be discussing about remote sensing and geographical information system in biodiversity conservation. Biological diversity or biodiversity has been defined by Convention on Biological Diversity, that is CBD, as the variability among living organisms from all sources including inter alia, terrestrial, marine and other aquatic ecosystems and the ecological complexes of which they are part. This includes the diversity within species, between species and of ecosystems. Biodiversity can also be defined as the natural variety and variability within and among living organisms and the ecological complexes in which they occur naturally, as well as the way of interaction among organisms and with that of physical environment. It is a multidimensional concept that includes different components, example the genetic population, species and community levels, and each of them have structural, functional and compositional attributes, for example size of population, species composition and distribution of alleles. Due to the complex nature of biodiversity, it becomes very difficult to express and assess the biodiversity. It must be related to not only the variability of life forms but also with the ecological complexes of which they are recognized as important components. Conservation has become an essential means of interacting with the rapid degradation and conversion of ecosystem, which led to serious impacts on biodiversity. As rates of habitat loss and species destruction continue to mount, the need for conserving biodiversity has become increasingly vital during the last decade. Understanding biodiversity patterns distribution is very crucial so far as conservation strategies are concerned. Conservation of biodiversity is an indispensable issue due to increasing climate change and anthropogenic factors. This richness of life is crucial not only for maintaining the ecological balance but also for supporting human societies by providing ecosystem services such as food, clean water, climate regulation and soil fertility. Biodiverse ecosystems are more resilient with a greater ability to recover from environmental stresses such as droughts, disease and climate change. However, biodiversity is under serious threat from human activities, including habitat destruction, pollution, climate change, overexploitation of resources, and the spread of invasive species. Climate change disrupts temperature and precipitation patterns, affecting species life cycles and migration routes, often leading to altered ecosystems and biodiversity loss. Pollution from plastics, industrial waste and agricultural runoff contaminates environments, endangering marine and terrestrial species alike. Overexploitation such as overfishing and illegal wildlife trade puts additional pressure on species populations, often driving them towards endangerment. To conserve biodiversity, a range of strategies and tools are employed focused on preserving habitats, regulating resource use, restoring degraded ecosystems and involving communities in conservation efforts. Establishing protected areas such as national parks, wildlife sanctuaries and marine reserves provides refuges where species can live without human interference. Sustainable practices in agriculture, forestry and fisheries help minimize environmental impact, ensuring that resources are used in a way that allows them to replenish naturally. Legal frameworks such as the Convention on Biological Diversity, that is CBD, and the national laws like the Endangered Species Act ESA set conservation standards and provide critical guidelines to prevent species from being overexploited or habitats from being destroyed. Technology plays an increasingly vital role in biodiversity conservation with tools like remote sensing and geographical information system, that is GIS, allowing scientists to monitor large landscapes and track changes over time, while drones, camera traps and environmental DNA, that is eDNA, offer innovative ways to monitor wildlife populations and habitat conditions. Now, let us talk about remote sensing in detail. Remote sensing literally means acquiring information about an object, area or phenomenon without coming in direct contact with it. It involves collecting data about the Earth's surface using satellites or aircrafts, capturing high-resolution images that allows researchers to monitor environmental change such as deforestation, habitat fragmentation and land use change over time. This data is invaluable for identifying biodiversity hotspots, tracking shifts in vegetation and assessing the impact of human activities on ecosystem. By capturing high-resolution images and multispectral data, remote sensing can detect patterns and anomalies across vast landscapes, supporting efforts to understand and address the complex changes facing biodiversity. One of the primary applications of remote sensing in biodiversity conservation is habitat mapping. Accurate and up-to-date maps are crucial for identifying biodiversity hotspots, tracking changes in the land use and recognizing areas of critical habitat for endangered species. Remote sensing tools can differentiate between various types of vegetation, enabling conservationists to map specific ecosystems such as rainforests, grasslands, wetlands and coral reefs with great precision. Additionally, by monitoring vegetation health, remote sensing can detect early signs of ecosystem stress such as drought, disease or pollution, allowing for timely interventions. Another significant role of remote sensing in biodiversity conservation is in monitoring deforestation and habitat fragmentation. Forests, particularly tropical rainforests, are rich in biodiversity, hosting numerous species that depend on dense, contiguous habitat for survival. Remote sensing provides a reliable means of tracking deforestation rates by capturing changes in forest cover over time. This is especially valuable in regions where illegal logging and land clearing are prevalent, as satellite imagery can document these activities even in remote areas. Furthermore, by detecting fragmented patches within ecosystem, remote sensing helps conservationists understand the impact of human infrastructure like roads, cities and agricultural expansion. Fragmentation isolates species, disrupts migration routes and limits genetic diversity, making it an urgent concern in biodiversity conservation. Remote sensing is also essential for monitoring climate-related changes in ecosystems, which are increasingly relevant as climate change alters global biodiversity patterns. Using multispectral and thermal imaging, remote sensing can track shifts in temperature, precipitation and vegetation patterns, providing insights into how species distribution and ecosystem may respond to climate change. For instance, rising temperatures may force species to migrate to higher altitudes or latitudes, a trend that remote sensing can monitor over time by linking these observations to biodiversity models. Scientists can predict which areas are at high risk of species loss due to climate change, allowing for targeted conservation efforts. Furthermore, remote sensing facilitates the management of invasive species, a major threat to native biodiversity. Certain invasive plant species, for example, may alter the landscape by outcompeting native vegetation. Through remote sensing, researchers can detect changes in vegetation composition and quickly identify areas invaded by non-native species. By combining remote sensing data with ground surveys, conservationists can take rapid action to control or eradicate invasive species before they establish themselves widely, thereby protecting native habitats and biodiversity. Remote sensing has also advanced the monitoring of coastal and marine ecosystems, which are critical for biodiversity. Coral reefs, seagrass beds and mangroves are particularly vulnerable to changes in water temperature, pollution and overfishing. Satellite and drone imagery allow for precise monitoring of these ecosystems, capturing data on coral bleaching events, coastal erosion and shifts in marine vegetation. This information is critical for marine conservation efforts as it provides a clear picture of how these ecosystems are responding to human impact and environmental changes and where restoration efforts might be needed. Moving on to the geographical information system. Geographical information systems have become an essential tool in biodiversity conservation, offering a sophisticated way to manage and analyze spatial data related to ecosystems, species and habitats. At its core, GIS allows conservationists to map and track species distribution across vast landscapes, providing critical insights into where particular species are located, their movement patterns and how their ranges are changing over time. The capability is vital for identifying biodiversity hotspots, areas with exceptionally high number of species, and for determining which ecosystems require urgent protection or restoration. GIS also plays a pivotal role in assessing habitat connectivity, which is crucial for maintaining genetic diversity and ensuring species survival. By identifying and mapping ecological corridors, GIS helps conservationists design networks of protected areas that facilitate wildlife movement and reduce the negative effects of habitat fragmentation. This can be particularly important in landscapes that have been heavily modified by human activity, where wildlife corridors serve as lifelines for species migration and dispersal. In addition to mapping species and habitats, GIS is invaluable for monitoring land use changes and detecting threats to biodiversity. By analyzing satellite imagery and remote sensing data, GIS can track changes in land cover such as deforestation, urban expansion, and agricultural development that led to habitat destruction and fragmentation. This enables conservationists to identify areas of concern such as regions with rapidly decreasing forest cover or wetland loss and take proactive measures to protect these critical habitats. GIS also aids in assessing the environmental impacts of various human activities and development projects. Through the integration of multiple data layers, GIS can model potential scenarios to evaluate the risk posed by infrastructure projects, mining or urban growth, allowing policymakers to make informed decisions that balance development with biodiversity protection. Another significant application of GIS in biodiversity conservation is its role in climate change adaptation. Climate change is shifting ecosystems and species distributions, and GIS helps in modeling these shifts by integrating climate data with ecological data. By stimulating future climate scenarios, GIS can predict how habitats may change under different climate conditions, allowing conservationists to identify potential climate refuges or corridors that will support species as their current habitats become unsuitable. This proactive approach helps in designing strategies that will protect species from the anticipated effects of climate change, such as shifts in temperature and precipitation patterns. Furthermore, GIS plays a key role in restoration and habitat rehabilitation efforts. By analyzing environmental factors like soil quality, hydrology, and land use history, GIS can help determine the most suitable areas for reforestation, wetland restoration, or grassland recovery. It assists in identifying priority areas that have the greatest potential for ecological recovery, ensuring that restoration efforts are targeted and cost-effective. GIS can also be used to track the progress of restoration projects over time. Evaluating their success in improving biodiversity and habitat quality. Dear students, let us now talk about the role of remote sensing and geographical information system in biodiversity. It is very difficult to acquire information regarding species distribution with respect to location and time simply on the basis of field assessment and monitoring. In recent times, remote sensing and biodiversity communities have established cordial relationships to share their ideas, problems, and their solutions on a single platform. Such relationships have been appreciably strengthened with the advancement of satellite remote sensing technology in past 5 decades. Consequently, the advancement has boosted the interdisciplinary research at local and regional scale with high temporal resolution to assess the change in species distribution, loss of habitats, etc. Assessing and predicting ecosystem responses to global environment, climate change and subsequent consequences on humans are prime target for scientific community. The management and conservation of wildlife and biodiversity require a reliable and relevant data on the species distribution, abundance, habitats and threats as well. Therefore, remote sensing and geographical information system, a modern day geospatial technology, helps in data that's information collection for biodiversity conservation, management and planning. The conventional methods for data collection on biodiversity have been found to be costly and time consuming. Comparatively, remote sensing and GIS are the most efficient and cost-effective ways for collection of information and subsequent management of our natural resources. It offers a systematic synoptic view of regular time intervals and has been considered as useful for this purpose. Coupled with geographical information systems, remotely sensing data can generate information about soil, temperature, rainfall, topography, landscape, history and other climatic conditions, besides current habitat and soil coverage factors on which species distribution depends. Relationship between remotely sensed or GIS data and species distribution patterns can be used to predict the distribution of a single or a set of species over an hemisphere. Between remote sensing and science and conservation biology, the potential for synergies has been highlighted and acknowledged in the past by practitioners, researchers and data providers to better understand how remote sensing based studies can be utilized in monitoring and conservation of biodiversity. GIS is a tool that can be used for monitoring biodiversity, where it accommodates large varieties of spatial and attribute data. Embedded in a GIS, the information is used to target surveys and monitoring schemes. Data on species and habitat distribution from different dates allow monitoring of the location and the extent of change. Over the last few years, there has been a revolution in the availability of information and in the development and application of tools for managing information. It can help in changing the very approach of wildlife management based more on current information and location oriented. Remote sensing provides constant data of Earth at various scales at all levels, ranging from local to global. In addition to this, remote sensing does not require labor, and it also saves time when compared to ground-based observation. It covers a wide-scale terrestrial, atmospheric and oceanographic data collection, as well as the monitoring of environmental changes at global scale. Remote sensing plays a major role in monitoring changes in biodiversity and terrestrial, marine and freshwater ecosystems, where it provides repetitive images on regular periodic intervals that make it predominantly appropriate for monitoring. It facilitates a vast amount of information for understanding and monitoring biodiversity and its dynamics. The remote sensing monitors the changes in terrestrial ecosystems include changes in ecosystem extent, forest extent, health. For example, by monitoring greenness through estimating health can be challenged. The remote sensing provides a wide range of information that helps in estimating species distribution, and in integration with models also estimates the overall biodiversity. Wildlife and biodiversity management has stressed the requirement of having updated spatial information for decision making and implementation of plans. The updated spatial data information provided by remote sensing need to be integrated with the conventional database. According to the IUCN 1996, the main purpose of wildlife conservation is to maintain maximum plant and animal diversity through genetic traits, ecological functions and biogeochemical cycles, as well as uphold aesthetic values. Remote sensing techniques play a vital role in wildlife and biodiversity management because of its exclusive characteristics of synaptic wave, repetitive coverage and uniformity. In forest management, the remote sensing has a major role to play a revision and updating of working plan, wildlife management, forest fire control, soil and water conservation, land utilization studies, grazing management, mapping social forestry sites and for other important species of general afforestation programs. Now, forest management forestry conversion studies. With the population explosion and urbanization, the forest lands are being converted at a rapid rate, which cause a serious damage to the forest biodiversity. The forest cover distribution and its change is a crucial issue so far as forest management is concerned. Also, to develop the methods for estimating and evaluating the extent of forest resource and its change to support the policymakers to take a decision that may ensure and maintain the rich biodiversity of forest resource. Monitoring of the changes in the forest cover has been quite important task because of its significant impact on climate change. The remote sensing technique and GIS coupled with ground survey can be reliable in providing information on spatial distribution of forests and its change. With the rapid destruction of forests and encroachment, the use of multi-temporal satellite data using data analysis procedure provide a way to generate maps based on spatial changes by image differencing methods and logical operations. Such maps would help in assessing the extent of conversion of forest land based on multi-temporal satellite data. Forest fire damage. Fire is one of the natural or man-made disaster causing damage to the forest biodiversity and the ecosystem worldwide, which ultimately have adverse effects on soil, forests and humans. During the process of forest burning, the soil nutrients are reduced and the soil is left bare, making it more prone to soil and water erosion. Therefore, it is very essential to have precise and timely information of the total area burned. Topography, type of forests, etc. It is very difficult to manage fires effectively without any information related to the distribution and dynamics of forest fires. Remote sensing and GIS can play a crucial role in detecting burnt forest and developing a spatial model to forecast and assess the forest fires and subsequent impacts on forest biodiversity. Next up, we have the wildlife management. Wildlife distribution and protection are the prime focus area of wildlife management. So far as the management is concerned, the geospatial technology is very effective in analyzing, managing and visualizing wildlife data. GIS enables analysis and mapping of distribution of wildlife, their movements and the pattern of habitat use, which can provide precious information for the development of wildlife management strategies. In recent times, the rapid technologies improvement in GIS as well as in remote sensing techniques have significantly increased the accessibility and efficacy in ecological management and research. Next, management of grasslands. Grasslands are the world's most wide-ranging terrestrial ecosystem and are considered as major feed sources for livestock. Global positioning system and other ground-based sensor technologies have been recognized as valuable tools for grassland and herd management. With the availability of space-borne remote sensing data, it becomes possible to assess and monitor grassland ecosystems based on the data related to their status about biomass, productivity level, quality, phenological stage, species composition, and change their biophysical parameters and management characteristics, that is degradation, grazing, intensity. Now, let us briefly delve into agricultural biodiversity. Agricultural biodiversity is a broad term that consists of all components of biodiversity related to the food and agriculture, and all components of biodiversity that constitute the agricultural ecosystems, which are essential to sustain crucial functions of the agro-ecosystem, its structure and processes. The term agrobioinformatics is application of informatics for management, presentation, discovery, exploration and analysis of agriculture and related issues. Agrobioinformatics is a type of electronic documentation of biogeographical, taxonomical and ecological aspects related to agriculture. It may consider a multidimensional database in which information stored in digital form using remote sensing and GIS. Furthermore, spatial analysis significantly helps to understand agricultural biodiversity constraints. In conclusion, we can say that besides being integral to biodiversity conservation, remote sensing and GIS serve complementary roles. Remote sensing provides large-scale, real-time data on environmental change and ecosystem health, while GIS serves as a powerful tool for organizing, analyzing and visualizing this data to guide conservation, planning and decision making. Together, they form a cohesive framework for monitoring, managing and protecting biodiversity across spatial and temporal scales. That's all of today. Thank you.